The annual Thompson family dinner was always an exercise in humiliation, but this year felt different. I smoothed down my simple black dress, Chanel, though they'd never recognize it, as I walked into my parents' sprawling mansion. "Oh, look who finally made it," my brother Michael's voice carried across the marble foyer. "How's that little tech startup of yours, Sophia? Still playing entrepreneur?" I forced a smile thinking about the documents waiting on my desk back at my real office. Documents that would change everything tomorrow morning. "Still running, Michael. Thanks for asking." The living room was filled with the usual suspects. My sister-in-law Victoria dripping in obvious diamonds, my parents beaming with pride at their successful son, and various relatives eager to compare their achievements. Michael, of course, held court near the fireplace, champagne in hand. "You know," he continued, clearly enjoying his audience, "Harrison Technologies just had another record quarter. We're expanding into 3 new markets." He paused, shooting me a condescending smile. "But I'm sure what do you call it? Your innovation consulting is doing fine too." If he only knew that his record quarter was about to come crashing down. That his expansion plans were already dead in the water. That his company's fate rested in my hands. "Sophia, darling," my mother touched my arm, her diamond bracelet catching the light. "We're just worried about you. All these years with your little business. Perhaps it's time to consider something more stable? Michael always has positions available." I thought about my little business, Phoenix Innovations, and its silent acquisition of Harrison Technologies' debt over the past year. About how my brother's mismanagement had left his company vulnerable to the very takeover I'd orchestrated. "Actually, Mom," I took a sip of champagne, "business is going quite well." "Oh, please," Victoria chimed in, adjusting her designer dress. "We all know you're struggling. Our housekeeper's daughter saw you working late at that tiny office downtown. So sad, really." That tiny office was just a front. My real headquarters occupied the top 3 floors of the city's most prestigious building. But they didn't need to know that. Not yet. The dinner proceeded as usual. Michael dominated the conversation with tales of his business prowess, each story more exaggerated than the last. "We're about to close the biggest deal in company history," he boasted. "Once we acquire Pacific Tech, we'll be unstoppable." I hid my smile behind my wine glass. Pacific Tech had already rejected his offer, in favor of a better one from my company, though he wouldn't know that until tomorrow. "Speaking of business," my father turned to me, his voice carrying that familiar disappointed tone. "Your brother tells me your little startup is trying to compete in the enterprise software market. Isn't that a bit ambitious for your resources?" Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. The caller ID showed my assistant's name, Sarah. She knew never to interrupt family dinner unless it was urgent. Everyone watched as I excused myself to take the call. "Miss Thompson," Sarah's voice was professionally crisp. "The board has approved all the layoffs at Harrison Technologies. We're ready to proceed with the restructuring tomorrow morning. Do you want to approve the full list?" I looked back at the dining room where my family sat in their bubble of assumed superiority. At Michael still bragging about his doomed expansion plans. At Victoria showing off her new tennis bracelet that probably cost more than what they thought I made in a year. "Yes," I said clearly, loud enough for them to hear. "Approve all of them." "The entire executive team?" Sarah confirmed. "Including your brother?" I watched Michael's face change as he processed what he was hearing. "Especially my brother." The silence that followed was deafening. Victoria's fork clattered against her plate. My mother's hand flew to her throat. And Michael's face had lost all color. "Sophia," he started, his voice trembling slightly. "What are you talking about? What layoffs?" I walked back to the table, feeling the weight of every eye in the room. "Oh, didn't you know?" I smiled, channeling years of his own condescension. "Phoenix Innovations has acquired controlling interest in Harrison Technologies. As of tomorrow morning, we're restructuring the entire company." "That's impossible," he sputtered. You don't have the resources." I pulled out my phone, opening my banking app. "Actually, brother dear, I have exactly the resources I need. Would you like to see the numbers?" The room erupted in chaos. My father demanded explanations. My mother started crying. Victoria's perfectly maintained composure cracked completely. "But Michael, Michael just sat there, finally understanding that his successful little sister wasn't so little anymore. And this was just the beginning. Tomorrow they would learn exactly what my tiny startup was capable of. The next morning I arrived at my real office in the gleaming Thompson Tower, which I also owned, another detail my family had yet to discover. The top 3 floors of Phoenix Innovations headquarters offered a perfect view of Harrison Technologies building across the street. I could already see the chaos unfolding. Sarah met me in my private elevator. "The news has broken," she reported, tablet in hand. "Harrison Technologies stock is down 40% in pre-market trading. Your brother has been trying to reach you since 6 a.m., 47 missed calls." I sat at my desk, crafted from rare African blackwood, worth more than Michael's annual bonus. "And the board meeting?" "Scheduled for 9 a.m. All members have confirmed attendance, except your brother, who's currently in his office having what security describes as a significant emotional event." I smiled, opening my laptop to review the morning news. The headlines were exactly what I'd expected. Tech giant Harrison Technologies acquired in surprise takeover. Unknown startup Phoenix Innovations reveals $4.2 billion empire. Sister Act. Family drama rocks tech world. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Victoria, her text dripping with desperate friendliness. "Sophia, darling, clearly there's been a misunderstanding. We should talk about this as a family." Another message popped up from my mother. "How could you do this to your brother? After everything he's done for you?" I thought about everything he'd done for me. The contracts he'd stolen, the clients he'd poached, the constant belittling of my ambitions. Each act of sabotage had only fueled my determination. "Miss Thompson," Sarah's voice came through the intercom. "Your parents are in the lobby demanding to see you. And your brother. He's making quite a scene at Harrison Technologies." I turned to the wall of security monitors. Sure enough, Michael was in his soon-to-be former office, throwing what appeared to be a very expensive tantrum. "Let's give him a moment to process," I said. "As for my parents, send them up. It's time for a proper family meeting." My mother burst through the door first, her designer suit slightly askew, very unlike her usual perfect appearance. My father followed, his face an interesting shade of purple. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded, then stopped short as he took in my office. The pristine space probably cost more than their entire house. The view alone spoke of power they'd never imagined I could possess. "Welcome to Phoenix Innovations." I gestured to the chairs in front of my desk. "Please sit. We have a lot to discuss." "Discuss?" My mother's voice rose hysterically. "You've destroyed your brother's company. His reputation." "No," I corrected calmly. "I saved his company from his mismanagement. Harrison Technologies was 3 months away from bankruptcy, something you'd know if you'd ever looked past Michael's bragging to see the real numbers." I pulled up the financial reports on my desktop screen, turning it for them to see. 18 failed product launches. 30 million in unauthorized expenses. A sexual harassment scandal he paid to cover up. "Would you like me to continue?" My father, ever the businessman, shifted strategies. "Sweetheart, if you wanted a bigger role in the company we could have discussed this. There was no need for such aggressive tactics." "Aggressive tactics?" I laughed. "Like when Michael sabotaged my first major contract. Or when he spread rumors about my company's stability to scare away investors. Those kinds of tactics." The door burst open again. Michael stormed in, security guards close behind. "You can't do this to me," he shouted. "I built that company." Actually, I pressed a button on my desk and the wall screen came to life, displaying a complex web of acquisitions and ownership structures. "You nearly destroyed that company. I've spent the last year quietly buying up your debt, stabilizing your failing projects and preparing for this moment." I stood up, enjoying how they all took an instinctive step back. Phoenix Innovations isn't just some tiny startup anymore. We're a $4.2 billion technology empire. Harrison Technologies is just our latest acquisition, and you, dear brother, are about to learn what real business leadership looks like. What do you want? Michael's voice cracked. Money? A position? Name your price. I smiled, thinking of all the times he'd offered me entry-level positions at his company. I want you to understand what it feels like to have everything you've built taken away by someone you underestimated. But unlike you, I'm not going to destroy what I've acquired. I'm going to make it better. I handed him a folder. Your new position, should you choose to accept it. Junior Project Manager, reporting directly to my VP of Operations. Same offer extends to your executive team. Those who qualify, of course. Victoria, I'm afraid your position as Chief of Social Media won't exist in the new structure. The silence that followed was deafening. My mother sank into a chair, all pretense of superiority gone. My father stared out the window at the city skyline, perhaps finally seeing the empire his daughter had built while they weren't watching. And Michael just stood there holding his new contract, finally understanding that his little sister had outplayed him at every turn. Now, I said, sitting back down, shall we discuss the future of Harrison Technologies? Or would you prefer to clean out your offices first? The weeks following the takeover were a masterclass in corporate transformation and family dynamics. I watched from my office as Harrison Technologies underwent its metamorphosis, not just in structure but in culture. Michael surprisingly accepted the junior position. His first day was particularly memorable. He arrived in his usual expensive suit, only to find his new workspace, a modest cubicle next to the very employees he used to ignore. Your morning coffee, Mr. Thompson, his former executive assistant smirked, walking past with my morning latte. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Victoria tried a different approach. She showed up at my office unannounced, dressed in what she probably thought was business casual. A Gucci dress that cost more than her new car payment. Sophia, darling, she purred, surely we can work something out. I have excellent connections in the social circuit. Like the connections you used to spread rumors about my company's stability? I interrupted, pulling up screenshots of her social media posts mocking my failing startup. Those connections? She left in tears, her designer heels clicking angrily across the marble lobby. My parents were the last to adjust. After their initial shock wore off, they tried different tactics. First came guilt. How could you humiliate your brother like this? We raised you better. Then bargaining. Surely we can keep this in the family? Your father could advise on the restructuring. Finally, acceptance, though it came with an unexpected twist. 1 month after the takeover, during our first official board meeting, my father cleared his throat. But I may have underestimated you, Sophia. The boardroom fell silent. In 25 years I'd never heard him admit a mistake. When you started your company, he continued, I thought you were being stubborn, refusing to follow the path we'd laid out for you. But now, he gestured to the quarterly reports showing Phoenix Innovation's extraordinary growth. Now I see you weren't following a path. You were blazing one. I let his words hang in the air for a moment before responding. Thank you, Dad. But this isn't about proving you wrong. It's about proving myself right. The transformation of Harrison Technologies exceeded even market expectations. Under Phoenix Innovation's leadership, we streamlined operations, invested in actual innovation rather than Michael's vanity projects, and created a workplace culture that valued merit over family connections. Michael, to everyone's surprise including mine, thrived in his new role once he got over himself. Stripped of his executive privileges, he finally had to learn the business from the ground up. 6 months later he earned his first promotion. I never really knew what our developers did, he admitted during a project review. I just took credit for their work. And now? I asked, genuinely curious. Now I know we had it all wrong. Success isn't about looking powerful. It's about building something meaningful. Victoria found her own path, though not within the company. Last I heard, she started a small fashion blog, ironically finding success by being genuine rather than pretentious. The final chapter of this transformation came during the annual Thompson family dinner, 1 year after my takeover. Same mansion, same dining room, but very different dynamics. Phoenix Innovations just closed another record quarter, my father announced, raising his glass. Sophia, would you like to tell us about the new AI initiative? I looked around the table. Michael, nodding encouragingly from his significantly humbler position. My mother, finally seeing me as more than just her daughter who needed guidance. The relatives who once mocked my tiny startup, now hanging on my every word. Actually, I said, standing up, I'd like to propose a toast. To family, Not the kind that demands conformity, but the kind that grows stronger through challenge. To success, not measured by appearances but by impact. And to small beginnings, because sometimes the biggest empires start with a tiny startup that nobody believed in. The room erupted in genuine applause, a far cry from the condescending tolerance of a year ago. Later that evening, as I prepared to leave, Michael caught up with me in the driveway. "You know what's funny?" he said, looking at my still modest car. "All those years we thought success looked like expensive cars and corner offices. But you built an empire while driving a Toyota." I smiled, pulling out my keys. "That's because I knew something you didn't, brother dear. True success isn't about showing off what you have. It's about building something so significant that you don't need to show off at all." As I drove home to my penthouse, the one asset I finally allowed myself to indulge in, I thought about the journey. From the tiny startup they mocked to the empire that changed their lives. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying what others built. It's about building something better yourself. And sometimes, just sometimes, the smallest beginnings lead to the biggest transformations, especially when nobody sees them coming. The next morning, as I sat in my office reviewing acquisition proposals, Sarah brought in an interesting piece of mail. It was my old business plan, the one Michael had torn up at a family dinner years ago. My mother had kept it and now returned it with a note. "I found this while cleaning. I didn't understand it then, but I do now. You didn't just build a company, Sophia. You built a legacy. One that will outlast all our foolish pride. I'm sorry we didn't see it sooner. Love, Mom." I pinned the tattered business plan next to my first company logo, right beneath the wall-length windows overlooking the city. Every morning it reminds me that success stories don't always start with advantages. Sometimes they start with someone believing in themselves when no one else would. Last week, a young entrepreneur came to pitch her startup to Phoenix Innovations. Her hands trembled as she admitted she had no Ivy League degree, no family connections, just an innovative idea and determination. I thought about my own journey as I listened to her pitch. Then I did something that would have shocked my family a year ago. I invested in her company not despite her humble beginnings but because of them. After all, every empire has to start somewhere. Even if it's just with a tiny startup that nobody believed in.